Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Beth Tumarkin, and I am with Breaking Forward Coaching, and welcome everyone to the webinar that we're doing today about professional burnout. I'm joined by Casey Ducote, Wave Casey, who is our executive assistant and client support specialist, and she has her own extensive experience in both legal and real estate worlds. We have Kate Caravella. Kate, who
Hi.
has extensive experience in, working in the mental health realm, helping coach people to achieve their best lives. And she's worked across a whole variety of industries helping people do that. To go back to me, I'm a psychiatrist. I've been working in the mental health field for about 25 years now and find it really fulfilling, along with the coaching that I also really enjoy. It's great to help people who are striving to become their best selves. And then today we have Danielle Watts, who is giving our presentation about the professional burnout. And Danielle's worked hard to bring this to you. She has extensive experience in the legal world as she is a lawyer and as a small business owner. So she brings a lot of experience. We're really glad to have her be a part of Breaking Forward, and we're really excited to learn more about what she has to offer us today.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. As Beth said, my name is Danielle Watts. This is a big topic for me because I did get professionally burned out, which is one of the reasons I started seeing Kate and Dr. Tamark and Beth. So it's yeah, I don't want to say it's near and dear to my heart, but it's something that I'm very, very familiar with. I have a lot of experience with it. Um, and so I want to talk to you about, ways to recognize it, how to get through it, share some personal stories, how I got through it. And let me start sharing my screen with you. Oh, it says the host is not allowing sharing for this webinar.
Oh, well, let me figure out how to do that. Start share. Okay, wait. I think. Oh boy. Okay. Oh boy. The one thing I did not practice. Um,
We're good.
let's see.
Let's see.
Screen share. Well, please bear with us. Oh boy. Okay, let's see. No, not that. Um, Casey, do you know how to do this?
I would need to be the host.
Go under settings, Kate.
Okay.
But right now it's
Oh,
saying that my name is Kate Caravella, so let me try reclaiming the host. I am the host now, and I
okay.
shall grant you share
Oh, now it
privileges.
says I can send the request like I did last night. Okay.
Allow. Okay,
Yeah,
should be good.
gotcha. Okay.
There we go.
All right. How about now? Does that look good?
That does look good. There we go.
All right. Thanks everyone for being patient with us. Okay, so here's our learning objectives today. Like I said, what we're going to do is learn about the definition of professional burnout, the rates, signs and symptoms, and the at-risk populations, which is just basically like the kind of employees and the kind of people, the kind of personalities that this can develop in. And then next, we're going to talk about how it impacts your life because it's not just a work thing. It's not just, at work where this shows up. It'll show up in your home life too, because, we're not just employees. And then we're going to talk about how to guard against it, both for as an employee and as an employer, how to help your employees through that. Okay, so definition. There's actually a World Health Organization definition, which was new to me, but it defines professional burnout as an occupational phenomenon resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So there's a lot of things going on in that one sentence because every workplace, has stress. And one of the things that's important to know is that you have to be able to manage that stress. And then we're going to talk about that today. How to set boundaries, how to say no, how to, protect yourself from these feelings, which will, you know, honestly take over your life if you don't do it, as experienced by myself. So, um, the first thing this will cause is energy depletion and exhaustion. And that's just like, it doesn't come on all at once. It'll be like brain fog. It'll be, irritability, lack of concentration. And it's just kind of like at the end of the day, you're just kind of like blah and you're just like done. You have nothing left to give. And then that will build up so much that once you're in the workplace, you develop this like negativity, this cynicism, this, whereas once you might have thought, oh, I get to go to work today and I'm going to help people and I'm going to kill it on this project. And you really kind of lose that. And it's not because you believe in your job any less, it's because you literally don't have the bandwidth to keep it up. Like that, it's not sustainable once you get to that burnout area. You can't sustain it as you normally would. You can't sustain doing your job functions. And that really goes into number three, which is you become less productive at work. You're not a great employee to be either around professionally or personally. You kind of withdraw. And so it goes again, that doesn't happen overnight. It goes slowly. And I think it goes so slowly sometimes that you don't even recognize it. You might think this is just like, oh, I'm just tired. I'm just, need a break. I just need a vacation. But it really is more than that. And there's more we can do to help that. And so professional burnout, what it is not a mental health disorder. It's not a weakness. And it's like I was just saying, it's not just job fatigue, right? Everyone gets tired of work at times. Work is stressful. But it is a syndrome that results from chronic workplace stress, again, that has not been successfully managed. Like I just said, it starts off subtly and it gradually worsens. It just builds and builds and builds and builds until like one day you reach the point, like I did, where I'm just like, this is, I can't do this anymore. This isn't sustainable. And that's the difficulty, is that it does come on so slowly that, you can make excuses. Like I said, I need a break. I just need to get through this one project. It'll be better next week. And if you don't manage it well, which I did not, it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better next week. It's not going to get better after I close this case, after I finish this project. It's just going to snowball. Okay. And there are certain risk factors, actually. There's certain jobs, there's certain personality factors that make it make you more susceptible to professional burnout. And the industries this happens in are often, industries where you take care of people, where you're in social services, you're in legal services, veterinary, and all of these are high-paced jobs too, right? And people who get into these jobs tend to have these personality factors that you see under number three. You're a perfectionist, you're type A. You are the kind to like give and give and give. And so it just, again, becomes like a snowball. Like you can't stop. Like you want to do more, you want to help more, you want to show, hey, I am the best there is at this job. I want to show I can do it all. I want to show I can help this person the best that there is. And when that's kind of your personality and you're in one of these jobs that not only requires that, but encourages it, that's where it can just run amok. And that's why you have to be able to take a step back and kind of recognize the burnout and manage your behavior and your role in that. Okay, so this is kind of what we just talked about. High stakes jobs where there's constant urgency, unrealistic expectations, high responsibility, chaotic schedules, all of those things can lead to burnout. And one of the problems is if your organization, your company is poorly organized, or if you don't have, good leadership at the top, to recognize, hey, this work is difficult. This work is can be traumatizing. This work can really deplete someone. If you don't have that kind of management or support, and then you're just kind of stuck with yourself, and like again, employers who not just expect it but encourage it, that's going to take a toll on you. It really, really does. And that is kind of how, you know, just going to work can lead to this burnout.
Can we go back to that previous slide?
Yes.
Just wanted to point out, like it could be our boss, right? Who has these unrealistic expectations, or maybe they're a poor communicator, and so they expect for us to read their minds. But also could even just be our clients. Like if when we're in the service industries, whether it's real estate or sales of some sort, like we can have clients who have these unrealistic expectations that they want to put on to us, that they want us to, be present for, to, at times that we should be asleep, frankly, or they want our ear at any time, day or night. And so learning how to navigate that always on expectation that can be present in certain fields is that can be a contributing factor as well. Just like you're always on, you're always expected to pick up the phone, you're always expected to be available. So just a thought I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that is so true because, now obviously everyone has a cell phone and we are expected to answer it, all the time. And so that's one of the things we're going to talk about in a bit is the boundary, the need, the necessity to put your phone down. To not check your email, at 11:30 right before you're going to bed and you find something there and then that causes, a crisis in your head and then you don't go to sleep and again, snowballs. But yes, thank you for pointing that out. Okay. All right, a few statistics here for you. 74% of employees say they've experienced burnout. That is honestly not surprising to me. Because I think we have become kind of a culture of work, work, work. And of course, we're lucky to work. We're lucky to have our jobs. We're lucky to have our careers. But, at the same time, there we can overdo it, right? And at the expense of our personal lives and our personal health. And so the one statistic here that really stuck out to me is that people who are burnt out are 180% increased risk of developing a depressive disorder. That is a lot. I mean, that is heavy. All because of your workplace burnout, not even considering any other factors. That's just with that. And that's a lot. And then that leads into the other statistics, of course, are then you're going to start missing work. You're going to take sick days. You're going to take a lot of sick days. And again, like I was saying, until you're able to create those boundaries, it's not going to get better. It's not like you're just going to take a day off and then you're going to get back to normal. It's going to be the same thing. The whole cliche definition of insanity. You're going to do the same thing and expect different results, but you're not going to get it. Just taking a day off or some sick days, it's not going to change, the ultimate, the burnout. All right. And this is really where my experience is. Personally, burnout starts at work, but it follows you home. It impacts your health, your relationships, your social experiences, your spiritual connections. It affects everything. And that just shows up with, at the end of the day, you go home from work, or if you work at home, a lot of us do. I know you come out of your office, and whether you have a partner or kids or friends, I know like at the end of the day, like I finish work and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to make dinner. Like, are you kidding me? Dinner. And then, if you have small kids, you have to bathe them and put them to bed. But you're just mentally depleted because you're burnt out. And it just feels like the heaviest chore that there is. Or, and here's a for example tonight, you're done with your work week. Your friends are like, hey, the US is playing tonight in the World Cup. Let's go out. Let's go put on our gear and watch the game. And you're like, no, like I can't. I'm gonna sit on the couch with my snacks. And for me, when I realized that my life had turned into saying no to my friends, into just feeling like my family was a chore. I don't, my family is the best thing, I love my job, but my family is the greatest part of my life. So I don't want my family to get my crumbs at the end of the day, the very little that I have left to give because I have burnt myself out at work, because I haven't established clear boundaries, because I can't say no. So that's again where my experience is, that where I started to make a lot of changes in my life. Okay.
If I can just chime in, I did put a poll up. Um, Only 5 people have answered it so far. So if you're able to answer that, audience members, go ahead and do that. I asked, have you experienced professional burnout? 6 people have answered, and 6 people have said yes. So,
And I think there's in another slide, there's a specific poll piece too,
oh,
if I'm
okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I think there was two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
Yeah,
jumped the
that's
gun.
okay. Thanks, sir. Thanks for being on the ball. Um, All right, and this slide just kind of shows, this is kind of what I was talking about. It manifests itself in many different ways with your physical health. A big one for me was sleep disruption. And that still happens to me every now and then. I'm one of those people, like I need my sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I am just not, you know, I'm not, here's a better way to say it. If I don't get enough sleep, I am automatically more anxious the next day. And then if I start the day with anxiety, it doesn't calm down, once you go to work, and your work is not going to cause your anxiety to decrease. Not usually. Mine does not. So yeah, it shows up in sleep disruption. It shows up in not being able to fall asleep at night, or waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, what do I have to do at work? What did I not finish yesterday? What do I still have to do tomorrow? And that leads to all kinds of issues. A lot of people gain weight because at night you'll come home, and instead of, you know, doing the things that you should do to manage this, you'll sit on the couch with your ice cream, or you'll open a drink, and you'll just mindlessly snack away, and just leads to, just empty calories, poor nutrition, which again is not a good way to fuel your body. I was just talking about higher anxiety, depression, increased irritability. That was also a big one for me, finding at the end of the day, I'm so burnt out from work. I'm so tired for work that I'm irritable with my family. And again, I did not want to be that person. No one wants to be that person. So that was a big one for me to recognize that, why am I so irritable? Why am I these people that I want to give my best to are getting my least? And again, then that goes into the fourth one, strained relationships with friends. A lot of, we have our family support, and which is great, but friend support is very important too. And then especially a lot of people who are extroverts, and are, need that friend time, need that people time to kind of like refill their cup. But they start pulling back from that because they're so tired from work. They start pulling back from their friends, and then their cup is filled even less. And again, it just goes on, and very, very negatively And it just creates a poor environment for your body to live in. It really does. Speaking from, again, personal experience. Oh, here's the poll. Here's the poll.
There's the audience poll. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered that already, but maybe we can, yeah, if we want to say, if you have experienced it or you experience some symptoms, if you have not experienced this, maybe you have some tips. Maybe you're just much more emotionally managed than I am. Okay. And this I'm just going to go over real quick. This is just like kind of from an an employer perspective. When your employees are burnt out, it significantly affects, your bottom line. These workers are more likely to quit. They're more likely to miss deadlines, to be careless, and eventually to not even care about their work. So it's really, I think we as a nation are doing a little better recently with recognizing, the mental health impacts of workplace stress and burnout. And there are a lot more resources from employers. I know like I work for the federal government. The federal government has a lot of resources, a lot of counseling, a lot of free counseling, and a lot of insurance companies offer that too, through your job. So if it's a really important thing for employers to watch out for in your employees and to offer those resources to recognize that, recognize it in your employees before you get to this point of your company is losing money and losing talent because of a bad structure.
Something, oh, if you don't mind me interjecting, something in our common recent memory is, the pandemic and our poor nurses, not just nationally, but around the world, they were so burnt out. They were, expected to, you know, take care of so many patients at the same time, and yet there was a lot of worry and stress, like, am I going to get sick, am I going to take this home to my family? They just weren't able to emotionally regroup between shifts, and then as and then what started to happen is some nurses just felt like they needed to quit for their own health, their own mental health, for safety reasons, just completely burnout reasons. And so then the ones who were left had to take on even more. And something that a lot of them spoke about was this feeling of a lack of empathy eventually. Like they just had a hard time having empathy for their patients, and that felt like a true moral injury. Like people are in certain work environments where it's just causing them pain because they see that it shouldn't be this way. And yet you just have to persist because that's just what is happening right now. So they feel powerless, they feel helpless. Just some thoughts that came to mind. And so we've lost a lot of nurses, and we have a nursing shortage even more so than we once did, but just because of all of that. So, for everyone's individual businesses, for corporations, if we want to keep the talent and we want to, have this longevity of talent within our company, we have to be really considering burnout and making sure we're creating an environment that minimizes that as much as possible.
And if I can also just jump in real quickly too, when I was helping Danielle put together the presentation and the information, one of the things that came up in terms of like people who are at high risk that I think we all know, but because we all know teachers, we've all had teachers. Teachers have a very, very, very high risk of burnout. And they oftentimes don't have the resources internally to support that and to support going through it. Their teachers don't just go to work, clock in, clock out, right? And my mom was a teacher, so I know the amount of time and work, and they're often underpaid and they're often unappreciated. And I do know that there's some, that's more at the micro level where a lot of local school systems will literally be very, very in sync and in tune with burnout, and will try to, come up with creative approaches and make themselves available to their teachers to be able to kind of keep them as in sync and as aligned with what they need as possible. So that's just the teachers are the near and dear to my heart. So just wanted to mention that. I'm sorry, Danielle, please continue.
Thanks. To Beth's point, I have two brothers and they both have wives. Three of the four of them are nurses. And so absolutely, that is so true. And it was, I think the part also about like you come home and you're so worried about spreading it to your family. There was so little information and it happened so fast. They all of them would come home, go into their garages, strip their clothes. So they didn't even like bring those clothes even in the house, for laundry. And yeah, it's just the amount of stress that caused. Yes. And I think it was a good point you said about the nurses who are remaining start lacking the empathy because you just don't have for lack of a better word, the bandwidth anymore. You're just trying to, it's kind of like you get into like literally survival mode and you're just like, I've got to get through the day. I've got to do this and this and this and this and this. And then that's, the whole point of this is that's not a way to live. So yeah, I need to be really, really good about that for ourselves and for those of us who have employees, for our employees. Okay. So at Breaking Forward Coaching, one of the tools that we use is called the BAT, the Burnout Assessment Tool. And this is, kind of like a fun little quiz. And it goes through a bunch of questions and you rate yourself from never to always. And there's five factors. And at the end, it adds up and it kind of, gives a risk, like a kind of like a risk assessment to how much at risk you are for a professional burnout. And it's not a long quiz, but it's very interesting to me because there's one part that talks about, how you feel at work. Like, how often do you feel irritable at work? How often do you lose concentration at work? And then there's another part that just talks about you in general. And again, that's kind of the point of what we're doing today, how this is not just a professional burnout thing. It affects your body. How often do you feel muscle tension? How often do you have trouble sleeping at night? And it combines all of those factors again to give you a good a good preview of how much at risk you are. And so when we are coaching, we're going to coach individuals for professional burnout. That's where we start, so we can kind of gauge where you're at. And it is again, see here, extremely excellent. Oh my goodness. Considered excellent by psychometric standards, an excellent tool to predict burnout. Okay.
I took the assessment and I sent the results to Danielle. I was like, this is not good. But you know what? It's nothing that I didn't know, right? But it is something that I needed to kind of bring to my attention again because I was at moderate risk. I've been in severe risk and I've been in no risk zones, but the moderate risk. And I do want to mention real quickly, just so I don't forget, um, is that if anybody here would like to take the BAT, um, Casey had emailed you with our link for today. If you email Casey and just say, hey, I'd like to take it, Casey could send it to you. And if you get the results back to us, I can put together the assessment. Like I can score it for you because it's not just like you add the score. There's like a certain thing that you do with it. So if anybody would be interested, you could either just put your email in the chat or you could email Casey directly, and I'd be happy to do that for you just to give you a sense of where you might be. That's
Thank you.
all. Sorry.
Another thing I wanted to add in is that um, you can love your job and still be burnt out. Like I'm in the process of, transitioning careers, but like my job that I've worked for 25 years now as an attorney, I love it. I love what I do. So being professionally burned out doesn't mean you hate your job. It doesn't mean that you dread going to work because again, dread your work, dread your bosses, whatever. You both can be true. You can love your job and love what you do and get burnt out. And maybe that even happens more often because, at the end of the day, I'll be like, again, like I can help one more person, I can work another hour and close one more case, get one more referral done. But that kind of, I guess maybe that's when you're addicted to work, when you're a workaholic, that, that ties into that. Cause again, it's not sustainable. Even if you love what you do, that's not a sustainable, life. Okay. And so there's personal protective factors. These are the things that you can do to protect yourself from burnout, to reverse it once you're there, to create more boundaries. And it's really important to recognize, what areas are are going to work for you because there's a lot of different things that you can do. One of the things that I've found helpful is journaling because if at the end of the day, you take out your pen and paper and you write down about your day, and it's kind of like like you vomit all over the page and you're like, this day was hell because blah blah blah. And I think when you write it down, it's a really good tool for just kind of assessing, just kind of realizing, hey, this is not really normal. I need to take a step back. I need to figure out something else. And that's where, these other things come into play. Meditation also works really well for me. And I never thought that it would. I never thought that I would be a person who could sit there and honestly, sometimes I'm still not. Sometimes I go into it and I'm like, oh, I gotta meditate. But it is really, really helpful to me. It shocks me how much it helps me just sitting there and taking deep breaths and I do guided meditations. Um, like we talked about also at work, if you can get support, from your employer, whatever way that is, talk to your leadership, get a mentor, get therapy. Like there's, again, a lot of therapies offered through your workplace. If that's available to you, I definitely encourage you to take advantage of it. Prioritize sleep, like me. Like I said, if I don't prioritize sleep, everyone will know. So it's a big thing to me. And also I think though, Kate and I have talked about this before. I also really like to read to relax. But sometimes I will read too long and then I will stay up too late reading and I'll be like, yeah, you too. I'll be like this, but I'm relaxing. I'm doing something good for myself. But, ultimately I'm not because then I'm not getting enough sleep. So you really have to find the balance of what works for you to kind of maintain your sanity. I mean, is really what it is. Um,
Can we go
Yeah.
back to that slide? Because I
Yes.
love a lot of what I love everything that you had there, but things that really, popped out to me. You're so right about meditation. Just speaking to everyone who's watching the webinar, meditation has so much amazing research. And then journaling, the way I think of it is we're putting our emotion on paper and then our logical brain starts getting engaged and it's reading it and going, well, but what about this? Or why are we letting that happen? Like it can start already
yes.
coming up with solutions. And then, yeah, limiting screen time and books. I agree. I'm someone who can get caught up in a book too and be up too late. And then the physical health, there's so many mood benefits and releasing of tension that can come from exercise. And exercise doesn't have to be like training for a triathlon, right? It can just be like I went for a walk. I got a decent pace going on. Limiting alcohol is really high yield, guys. Like, yes, it works in the moment to help relax us, but it does not help any of our organs, like especially our brain. Like there's nothing that benefits from alcohol in the long term. So if we can find alternative ways of releasing that tension, relaxing, and then that positive reframing, how we view things, having the mental flexibility, those are things we can learn. Resilience, we can learn resilience. This is something that we can these are skills that we can purposely learn that can help us. And for some of us, we can learn it through having a mentor, having a coach. For some of us, we can learn it through, a good self-help book. For some of us, a good YouTube video that we can, a channel that we can watch over and over again. But this is a really high yield panel that Danielle's just shared with us, and these are all things we can tap into and things that we can learn. Like no, there is no one out there who can't learn how to be a little more mentally flexible.
My
Although
my my
they might
therapist
not.
might disagree with you on that one. But we've been working on mental flexibility a couple of years now. I'm not flexible. I'm less stiff, maybe. There's that.
That's why
Yeah,
I'm in.
thank you for that. Also, in the positive reframing, that just reminded me of something I heard from a Peloton instructor recently. And she was saying, when that, and this just is a life thing, but it was so profound to me. Um, when you start having like negative thoughts in your head, just any kind of like poor, just negative self-talk, which we all get, she's like, take out a pen and paper and rewrite that conversation. And it really, like you said, to get it down on paper and to change that conversation, it really works. I mean, it's not a hard thing to do, and it's very effective.
I agree.
Thanks for that. Okay. This is one of the things when Kate helped me with this is the 42% rule. The 42% rule is if you're, one of those type A high performer people, 42% of your time should be devoted to rest and relaxation. And I would bet that no one does that. I certainly don't. Even now that I've gotten better at, you know, at balancing, there's just no way that I do that. And so um it's a goal to get to that 42%, but I wonder if anyone is really, really good at that. And again, that's just not just sleep time. That's just, downtime, just doing things that like refill your cup, restore you. So kind of what we talked about so far, the whole point of this, recognize burnout, reverse it, and then build your resilience so this doesn't happen again, which is probably the most important part, because once you create those boundaries, once start saying yes to yourself more, no to work, you need to keep it up. You don't want to get to that point where you're quote better, and not burn out anymore and then fall back into your old habits. You're like, oh, I feel good now, so let me work the extra hour, or let me, do the next project. Let me start just a little bit more tonight. You don't want to get back into that. So, recognizing the choices that you make and the culture of your work is really important in that regard. Okay. And this is what I was just saying. Basically, you want to like check in with yourself a lot, and journaling is a really good way to do that. Not just journaling, but then like going back and reading it, especially, over like the last week, the last month, see if there's a pattern going on. See if you see, every day is a little bit more negative, or, hopefully every day is a little bit better. But one of the things on here that's really important to me is enlist support from friends and family. Again, I think over the last many years, there's been much less of a stigma about, talking about your feelings, talking about your mental health. I think there still is much more of a stigma for men, which I hate. But I think it's very, very important to share with your family and your friends how you're feeling, because two things I found. One, your people will support you, right? And your people will want to help you out and help you get through this. And two, you're not the only one feeling this. And which is what you tell people like, oh, I'm so anxious about this. And they're like, oh my gosh, me too. I thought I was the only one. I mean, sharing and talking to other people about it, developing strategies together, saying, how can I support you? How can you support me? How can we help each other? Because, everyone has different things. Like we talked about, some people who are introverts, you need a little more quiet time to, fill your cup. If you're an extrovert, you need a little more social time. But figuring out what that is for you is what's important. And then not just figuring out what it is, but actually doing it, tapping into it. And I think a really hard thing for me is like when I got to that burnout point to think like, oh my gosh, I have to do another thing today to kind of, get out of it. Like, oh, I have to go journal. Like, I don't want to journal. I don't want to add anything else. Like, I have to go ride the Peloton. Don't want to do that. It's just, I think if you get to that point, at least I did, when it feels like, again, like a burden, a chore, but you have to do it or you're gonna stay stuck. If you don't make a change, you're gonna stay stuck. So enlist that support from your friends and family, create space, create boundaries. Learn to say no is a huge, huge thing. And again, reframe it. If because at work, again, I serve the public. And so the way I always thought was if I say no, that's someone I'm not serving. I'm not able to serve someone else today, but that's at the expense of saying yes to me. And if you don't, so reframe it, you're not saying no to work, you're saying yes to yourself, if you don't say yes to yourself, again, you're gonna get to the spot that I was at, which is very, very low, and it's hard to come back from. So creating boundaries sounds hard, but it's so, so necessary. And then seek help, seek professional help. There's coaches, there's therapists, there's lots of people who can help you learn how to set boundaries, who can walk you through it. At a time when you feel like, I don't know how I can possibly do this again, there are people who will help you do that. So again, if your company offers this, lean into their resources, consider professional coaching. There's groups like support groups, there's stuff that you can do to tap into these things.
And if I could just jump in real quick, and this is regarding the enlisting the support from family and friends. One of the things that I have found is that when I'm in the midst of burnout and I'm having these symptoms and it's starting to drag me down and I could feel it starting to affect, um, I try really hard not to show it to others so as to not, take up their space and make them feel worse than that. But what I've learned is, for example, that my husband who's on here, is very, very, very good at kind of pitching in and picking up the slack when I need him to. So sometimes it's having that conversation of this is where I am right now. And, I'm going to need to take a little bit of time to do X, Y, and Z, and kind of assisting with and enlisting that help. And also, like I said, my husband is here, but also one of his coworkers is here. And I know that the two of them often lean on each other in terms of, hey, I need to do this. Can you do this? And that compatibility and that being able to work together in that way can really, especially if you do work in a toxic environment, that can really, make you bring you back to center as opposed to feeling like you're on an island all alone by yourself. Because professional
Yeah.
burnout is it's very socially, it's very isolating. It shrinks the rest of the things in life that bring you joy and pleasure. So thank you.
Exactly. And that's how I found for me too. And then when you check in with others, whether, like you said, whether they're coworkers, whether they're friends, family, it helps you to be less isolated. It helps like open that circle again so you can, figure out what you need, figure out how to get out of this. All right. So again, key takeaways. This can be avoided, but if you are there, don't delay seeking support. There are lots of ways to help, and it can be changed. Um, and we are here to help.
So why don't we open it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm no, I'm, I got ahead of
No, I
myself.
think it's good because I think the next one we're just going to talk about what's next after this, the
Yes.
next webinar.
Oh, okay. Yes. I was getting ahead of myself, but I guess I'm not.
Any questions or thoughts that popped up for any of you guys as we were talking about this? I know I was chiming in.
I have a question, and this is probably for Dr. Tamergan. What are some supplements that can help protect your brain? I saw supplements was listed there.
There, the supplement market will tell you there's a ton of supplements that will help your brain. And and different people actually might need specific ones. Um, I I do like vitamin D. Vitamin D is a neurosteroid and it helps with inflammation in the brain, along with helping your bones and your immune system. I like B complex. A B complex is a vitamin that has all the different Bs in it. And if I know for me, when there are times that I was feeling really sluggish or tired or just, wrecked by lunchtime, because I've had days like that, a B complex at lunch would it worked as well as or better than a coffee. Like it gave me a little bit of an energy lift. B12 alone never did that for me, but a B complex did. And so that was a real help for me at certain points in my life when I had a lot of different pokers in the fire. Um, for people who are maybe actually feeling kind of physically run down, like they're having the aches and pains and maybe feel like they're wondering if they have an autoimmune disorder because they just hurt so much. Sometimes really watching our diet can be high yield. So it's not a supplement, but maybe the things we're eating are causing inflammation in the body. They're causing our blood sugar to spike and then it drops afterwards. So trying to gravitate more toward whole foods, foods that look like what they started on the planet as. So I tell my kids a fruit roll up is not fruit. It looks nothing like what it started in the world as. It's mushed up stuff that got a lot of sugar added to it. To hit the blueberries and the strawberries, the blackberries, to, have a whole variety of fruits and vegetables over the course of a day. Like the more colors we have, the better off we are. I say eat the rainbow, and of course I don't mean Skittles. They're delicious, but they're so bad for us. And then try to minimize like the simple carbs, the packaged in the middle of the grocery store stuff. That all it gives us a boost in the moment. Like I mean, I love a good Cheez-It as much as anyone else does, and Krispy Kreme donuts are amazing. But they give us that boost in the moment, but we just crash later, and long-term health is worse because of all the fillers and the other chemicals that are in it that can cause inflammation. So I myself have to plan to succeed to eat well. I have to, make my big batch of steel cut oats at the beginning of the week so that I have it for the rest of the week for myself. Because if I'm going to make oatmeal that you cook on the stove versus microwave, it's just not going to happen on a Wednesday morning. I got other stuff I got to do. But if I plan and make it at the beginning of the week, then I have it. And now I'm having this good, hearty, fiber-filled meal that I put chia seeds and walnuts into, and it tastes good. It's filled with fiber. It keeps my blood sugar stable all morning long. I'm not crashing by mid-morning. Since I started doing that, I've been feeling so much better in the mornings, but again, I have to plan ahead to be successful. So we
Hey,
have, mhm. Go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
Beth. I just want, there's a few questions that people have, so
Okay.
I just wanted to go through, and I think this is a really, really good one, and one that you know a lot about. Some of the symptoms might coincide with perimenopause and menopause. How do you rule that out when looking at professional burnout? Jody, thank you for posing that question because I do think it's a really, really good one.
That is a great question, a great comment. Um, well, to over reveal, I'm assuming there's a lot of women in the audience. The times that I was needing the B complex was when I was perimenopausal. And so just, all of a sudden the workload that I was able to hold before and do before without much difficulty, all of a sudden I was just, getting the headaches and getting fatigued. And so adding in the B complex really helped a lot, like I said. I gotta tell you guys, one time I was just having chronic headaches every day, and then we took a vacation and we were gone for a week. And it wasn't the best vacation ever because the kids ended up getting a GI illness and there was, a lot of vomiting during the course of the week. But just being away from work and taking that time away, the headaches went away. I didn't have those headaches the way I had been again because I disconnected and allowed myself to focus on something else. And like I said, it wasn't even the best vacation ever, but it still works. So if you guys are, being told you can't take vacation or you're not letting yourself have vacation because you don't feel like you deserve it, or for whatever reason you're not taking that time for yourself, I would highly encourage you to do it. It can be so high yield for your health, for your mental well-being, for your productivity when you come back. And I know people try to do those 3-day weekends. No, you need more time off. Like we don't recharge in just a few days. We need a longer period of time. But for perimenopausal stuff, if you're starting to realize your sleep is suffering, there's all these tips and tricks on how to help your sleep online. The internet has a lot of worthwhile things to read. Exercise, I cannot, again, tell you how much exercise can help us when we're experiencing, these sort of perimenopausal symptoms. And then, I mean, go to your GYN and say, fix this, like help me with this. And they'll walk you through like what all the options are, because there are a lot of options available to us.
And John had asked a question as well, and he wrote, "Hi, John. What are some of the things to watch out for when the pendulum swings too far the other way? Basically, if you think self-care can lead to laziness and/or oversatiation." I think that's a really, John, I can relate to that very, very much. That there's sort of like that sense of guilt where if I'm going to take that break, I'm going to do this, I'm going to not answer this phone call now, I'm going to spend time with my family now. And just sort of again that fear of like you're doing something wrong, or maybe not great. Now I can't get off the couch. Now I'm watching Law and Order for 4 hours in a row, which is one of my most favorite things to do. I think that again, John, it's like that balance. It's like that almost like that daily or at least weekly self-assessment of where am I? Am I feeling excuse me, am I feeling balanced? Am I feeling centered? Am I feeling am I leaning into my Law and Order couch surfing a little too much? I don't know if that helps that answer that question. Let's see.
If I can jump in too, and I think that I think most of us on this webinar are older and we've been in our careers for a while, and if you're doing a good job at work, if you're doing enough. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. If you're doing a good job at work and if you're doing enough, stuff that needs to get done. And so, but I do definitely think it's a shift it was for me that, to feel guilty for taking time to yourself, to thinking, I'm awake and I feel good and I can be productive and I can keep doing something else, but you don't have to, it's a mind shift for sure. And so, but yeah, I think that, I mean, we all have, I guess, parameters, goals, objectives at our jobs. So we know when we're doing enough and we know if we're not doing enough. And then, maybe it changes from week to week, based on our bandwidth. And, like maybe one week, you do your best and that looks significantly different than what your best looks like another week. And, it's a I think a balance. It's just something to work on and to know yourself, to know your work, to know what you have to do. And it's just like a weekly assessment, I think is a good way to do it, or even maybe a monthly assessment.
Well, and that's again too where working with the coach can be really helpful because you're literally working on this and touching on it on a regular basis, working with it, if you have a therapist or a counselor. But I think that one of the takeaways, and I think this leads in terms of a wrap up, I think this leads well into what our next seminar is on in July, which is sophisticated time allocation. Which sounds, for some reason for me, just sounds better than time management. But, the thing is that we know that burnout can happen to anybody and it can happen quickly, right? And it can be very, very, we could deteriorate. It could really, and often does, it puts us at physical risk. It puts us at satisfaction risk and family risk and mental health. But really, even more important than that, we can get out of it. And I think for one of the things that I would like to share too is that when I did the assessment the other day and it came up moderate risk, and I went, okay, like I really need to back this away and I need to do something with this. That was sort of like my check-in with myself. Um, the problem is, right, that when you're there, it's like you don't have the energy, the wherewithal. It's harder to pull out of, right? So we threw a lot of things at everybody today. You could do this and you could do that. And it's important to do this, important to do that. I would say for those of you who are in it and the idea of doing all those things, pick one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Pick one. It doesn't have to, you don't have to make this big life course correction. You don't have to like, it's not something you're going to be able to shed by doing one or two things. So pick one thing, see if it works. If it doesn't work, pick something else. And eventually being able to get there, because the truth of the matter is a lot of our jobs are demanding. And a lot of times we can't just say no, right? A lot of times things come up where things are a little bit busier. And that doesn't mean you have to choose between professional and personal. Sometimes you just need to switch around and figure out realistically what you have the time for. Where do you borrow the time in different areas? What can you do and who can help you?
That brings up something for me, Kate. Balance isn't necessarily that every single day is balanced. It might be that going back to, Kendall had made a comment about recognizing cycles is important, like deadlines and monthly and quarterly and annual ones. And that might be a week that there's no balance. It's just you're grinding out the reports, you're closing up the files. But then how do you balance that week out the next week? Can you carve out more time for yourself to, allow for the tension, to release the tension, to get past it, to take a break, to hit the mental reset button? And then, what Kate was saying is like pick one thing. Sometimes we're so fried we can't even do that. So, having someone you trust, whether it's a mentor, someone from work, your therapist, your coach, just someone to say, okay, here's the plan. This is what we're going to do. And then you're like, all right, I'm just going to do this thing. And then as you start to get your energy back, then you can start being more hands-on with the plan. But just whatever it takes to get you kick-started.
And so again, the next one in July is being facilitated by Beth and sophisticated time allocation. So we like we like you to join us if you're able to. Again, just as a reminder, if you would like to take the bad assessment, we can get it to you. I'm happy to score it for you and give you just sort of a general snapshot of where you might be. Please consider breaking forward coaching for anyone's personal or organizational coaching. We'd love to work with you. Thank you for attending. The date for the next one in July is, what is the date for the next one in July?
I have it right.
I feel like I should know this.
I did too. But
it's my burnout. That's where I am. So that's my excuse.
you know what? This is how it works. We're going to be doing it again on July 17th at noon. And then to project out into August 14th, we're going to be doing neurodivergence and career.
So thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today and spend time with us today. And I appreciate it. And Danielle, thank you for doing an amazing job and presenting some really relevant and accurate information that we could all use, could all benefit from.
Yeah, thank you all for attending.
Have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend. Bye all. Thank you. Bye, Lee.